how's it going, everybody? We're back to continue on working on the E36 Turbo. If you guys haven't seen any videos on it, I have a playlist where you can go through and watch everything I've done to the car. It's not from start to finish completely, but there's a lot of stuff on there that you guys might find useful. Today we're continuing on. We're putting on the front end, get everything bolted up back together so we can hopefully do a first start. One thing I do want to mention, I was actually planning on making another video before this one where I was gonna install a oil distribution block and add an oil temperature sensor as well as an oil pressure sensor, but it didn't end up working out too well. I got the distribution block and the oil pressure sensor installed and working properly, but I was having a lot of trouble with oil temperature. The ECU that I have is a Speeduino, which is like an open source version of a Megasquirt, and it has inputs for like up to 3 sensors, I believe. But for temperature sensors, it's finicky. There's not just a preset on Tuner Studios, which is the software that you use to tune the Megasquirt or the Speeduino. It's not plug and play. You have to code it, you have to program it in a certain way, and I'm not the best at tuning stuff. So I scrapped the idea for the video since it's not too hard. Just get the oil pressure sensor and the oil distribution block installed. It's pretty simple, but what you guys will see is once we get everything started, hopefully the engine starts up and we get a first start, we'll be able to monitor all the sensors with the tablet that we have, and I'll kind of go more in depth with that. But yeah, that's kind of all I was going to mention. Let's just get started with getting everything installed, and let's see if the car even starts up. So the first step was to get the engine bay as well as the front end put back together. Next up was clocking the turbo. This was relatively simple. I just had to find a spot where the fitment was good, and then I just tightened everything back down. And once I had that done, I moved on to installing the wrap for the downpipe. And honestly, this stuff is super annoying to work with. When you get on your hands stay itchy and they get irritated for hours and hours just because it's fiberglass and all those little fibers latch onto your skin. And once that was done, I went ahead and reinstalled the turbo after I tightened everything down. And I also went ahead and installed a turbo blanket for it. The reasoning behind that is hopefully it'll keep the temps down in the engine bay as well as keep the temps up in the turbine to hopefully improve the spool up time. And for my power steering fluid of choice, I'm using a Redline D4 ATF. Redline just a solid brand, and originally BMW recommends using this product called Pentacin. It's a really good fluid for power steering. The only problem is it's super expensive, so I was wondering if I could test out using this stuff instead. It's ATF fluid, which does sound kind of weird. But I was looking up on the forums and a lot of people did recommend this stuff, so I'm going to go ahead and give it a shot. Alright, next up is engine oil. For this I went ahead and used some Lucas engine braking oil. It's SAE 30 weight and it has a high zinc content, which is great for new piston rings, new bearings. It just helps overall lubricate better than the standard oils that you'll find in stores, mainly because it has a high zinc content, which most of the typical oils that you'll find in stores won't carry as much zinc as braking oil, mainly because it does wear out a catalytic converter, but we don't have to worry about that. So we're using braking oil for this stuff, and then after that, after I think the first braking cycle, we'll go ahead and drain all the oil out and just go back to some full synthetic oil. And for the cooling system, I just went with distilled water. I just went ahead and pressure tested everything after I poured in distilled water just to kind of make sure that we were holding pressure. Alright, so now that we have the front end done and we have all the fluids filled up, everything that's kind of necessary for the engine to start. I'm still missing some stuff, obviously. I still need the hood. I still need to bleed the clutch system. I found that the radiator is leaking. It's a very small leak, like it's still holding pressure right now. I pumped it up to 15 psi, and it's down to like 14, 13, but I could see it. I could see little air bubbles coming out of the radiator. So we're gonna go ahead and get a new radiator eventually, because I'm kind of broke right now. But everything is ready to go for the most part, you know, just to do just to kind of idle the engine and do a first start. So that's kind of the plan for tomorrow. It is pretty late. It's like 4:30 right now, so I'm gonna go ahead and hit the hay, and hopefully tomorrow we can start it up, and yeah, we'll have a running engine. So hopefully it goes good. All right, so first step, I'm just gonna go ahead and prime the oiling system. So first I'll crank it, let the oil build up, the oil pressure build up, and then you can go ahead and start it. What the fuck is that? Alright, there seems to be an annoying ass noise coming from somewhere in the engine bay. So I'm gonna have my girlfriend start the car, and I'm just gonna try to hear it out real quick. Looks like the oil pressure sensor is working now. It's reading 60 pounds of pressure. So there's oil pressure, which is good. Now I just gotta figure out what that noise is, and yeah, just kind of let it idle once I figure out the noise. And we're supposed to run it for like 20 minutes at like 2,000, 2,500 RPM. But I just need to figure out this noise first, because it's really annoying. I think it's a power steering, because that's usually what makes loud ass noises like that. What the hell is that noise? I think we're leaking something.
Something else?
I see some fluid over here.
Give it a lick.
Oh. That's fuel. So I had to call it off early, unfortunately, because I had to go to work, but I'm back now. So there's two things that happened when we went to go start the car. One, I found a fuel line was leaking just right here next to the injectors and the fuel rail. That was a simple fix. It was just a loose hose clamp, but I ended up taking it off and replacing it anyways. So we got some new hose clamps on. The second thing was a really loud squeal, like super annoying squeal. That I'm still trying to figure out what it was. My theory is that it was related to the power steering system. I'm guessing that because I put different fluid in, it reacted with the old fluid and it didn't mix well, and it's causing the noise. But yeah, those two things, we already got one fixed, so now we got to get the other one fixed. So I'm gonna go ahead and start draining it, and we can go ahead and replace out the fluid, and yeah, get it all swapped out. So let's do that. All right, it's done. Let's hope tomorrow goes good. Alright, so we're still getting the noise, and I just disconnected the belt and started the car just to make sure that it wasn't the power steering. It's not, it's still making the noise, and it's kind of going with the engine revolutions. It's not stopping at all, so it's telling me that it's something in the driveline. And right now, while I was trying to hear out where the sound's coming from, it's kind of the loudest in between the transmission and the engine. So I'm pretty sure it's the pilot bearing, or it's something related to the transmission or the engine. It's in neutral right now, so that's why I'm thinking it's the pilot bearing, because it's kind of one of the only things that's spinning. So unfortunately, we're gonna have to take off the transmission again, What I'm planning on doing is pulling out the transmission, starting it up again, giving it a crank, see if the noise goes away. If it does, then I'm thinking it's most likely just the pilot bearing. If it doesn't go away, then obviously it's something with the engine. So either way, we're in for a ride here. Maybe that wasn't a good idea. So since starting the engine without the transmission in wasn't such a good idea, the only thing I'm left with now is just to take a closer look at the transmission itself and just inspect it, try to figure out what exactly could have been causing the noise. And I think I found some clues. So let me go ahead and show you. So when I took a look at the clutch itself, here's the pressure plate, clutch, transmission. As I was inspecting the clutch, I realized that there's a lot of metal debris, metal dust around the clutch itself where it was riding on the input shaft. And when I take a look at the transmission, if you look closely on the inside, there was also a bunch of metal shavings around here. This is the cover that the throttle bearing rides on, and there's now a lip that formed on the edge here, so I can't even get the throttle bearing out anymore. So that leads me to believe that somehow, some way, the clutch was smacking the back of this shaft. It was all the way back in the input, and it was smacking this cover here. I have no idea how that happened. I was looking on the forums trying to figure out if anybody's ever had this problem, and to my surprise, no one ever has. So I'm kind of left with my own devices and trying to figure out exactly what could have caused this. I'm going to go ahead and get the clutch and the pressure plate installed, and I'm just going to make some extra measurements. I'm just going to double check that the fitment should be right. Everything should fit in. I'm just going to try to be really slow about it, get the pressure plate, the clutch back in, just make some measurements, put the tranny back in, and hopefully it should just pop right in. And I'm going to go ahead and also just kind of clean off the end of the shaft that got damaged. It should still be fine. I'm just going to kind of take off that lip, and yeah, hopefully we can get it in without any problems. So first, let's get that pilot bearing installed. Alright, so now that we have the pressure plate and the clutch installed, as well as the new pilot bearing, I already went ahead and removed the guide tube here, and I grinded it down. So I took off that lip and I added a bevel to it. As you can see, it's beveled, and I just went ahead and just cleaned everything out thoroughly and re-lubricated it and just reinstalled everything. So now that's good to go. It is a little bit shorter, but I think that'll be fine. So next up, I'm just going to go ahead and double check the measurements, make sure that everything is going to be all right. I think it will be, and we can go ahead and reinstall the transmission, and hopefully we won't have any more problems here. Alright, so I now have the transmission in. I got the clutch in, the slave cylinder, and everything's ready to go. Besides like the exhaust, the drive shaft, all that stuff. I just have the transmission in right now, but it should be good enough to start and just crank over and see if I can hear the noise. So let's start it up. All right, so I didn't hear it, which is a good sign. I think we might have fixed it. Now I just need to get everything bolted back up, exhaust, transmission, or not transmission, drive shaft, exhaust, and all the other small stuff that I forgot about just now, and start up for real. And hopefully next time we start it, it'll start up, it'll idle, and we won't have that annoying ass noise anymore. So let me bolt everything back up and I'll be back. All right, so I got everything bolted up. Let's start it up, see what happens. So it was at this point that I could still faintly hear the high-pitched noise for a bit. It got me a little worried, but after letting the car idle for a bit, it seemed to just fade away. So I proceeded to begin the break-in process, but I had to cut it short as I started to notice my coolant temps were beginning to enter the danger zone. I was a bit confused by this because I was still bleeding the cooling system at that point and didn't have the system closed off. So on a hunch, I decided to pull the thermostat and give it a test. And what did I find? Yep, it was stuck closed, which, added on to the coolant leaks I found earlier, helps explain the previously toast engine with a good old heaping of sad times on top. But instead of waiting for a new thermostat, I decided to just keep on pushing through and just deleted the thermostat for now so we can finish the break-in process. This ended up working pretty good. I revved the engine up to around 2200 RPM for 20-ish minutes for a light break-in. I then did a final compression test and found all these cylinders were within 10 psi of each other. So I called it good. We drained out all the engine oil and added some Redline 10W40 synthetic oil, which is supposed to be a high quality, high zinc oil. The slightly heavier oil weight will hopefully help keep the engine lubricated while we beat the car at the track. I also decided to add some of this engine treatment stuff from Bestline, which from all the research I've done seems to be more than just some snake oil and actually shows to improve the lubricity of the engine oil and slow down the wear process of all the internal engine components. Shout out to Project Farm for that one. But with all that being said, let me show you guys one more thing before we call it a day. Alright guys, and real quick, let me show you what I use to capture sensor data instead of gauges. Alright, so I'm pretty sure I've shown this off in one of the past videos, but I'll just show you guys real quick. This is just a standard Android tablet, doesn't matter what kind of tablet it is, but since we have a Speeduino, this will also work with Megasquirts as well. We have the benefit of using the Android App Store, and there's a certain app called MS Droid. That's what I use. Oh, missed. You just tap on it and it loads up. You have to configure it to hook up to, you know, your specific ECU and stuff, but once you figure that stuff out, it'll hook up, and I'll update the project. Yeah, it'll connect, and now we can view all the sensor data. So right now this is custom. It's a custom layout that I made for my setup here. I have, what is that? I got battery voltage, intake air temps, I got the air fuel ratio, I got the boost pressure, and I got the oil pressure as well as coolant temp. And this is for the tablet itself. It'll just say whether or not it's synced to the engine. But yeah, this app is pretty cool. You can kind of customize it however you want. You can show whatever data you want to see. You could also pop this off, and mine's just my tablet's just velcroed on. But if I make it vertical here, you'll have more access to different gauges. Again, you can customize these as well. Since I have mine landscape all the time, I don't really need the vertical. And you can also tune with the tablet. Here's all the different changes you can make. The engine, you can change a lot of different things here. This almost works as a secondary to the laptop. You can change spark tables, you can change fuel tables, you can change all sorts of things. It's just a bit more work since it is Not as fluid in terms of the UI as a standard laptop. It's a bit more work to change things out, but you know, it's doable. And it's got all the different settings that you need to make adjustments to the tune. And this is just back to the standard. Oh, there's the edit mode actually, where you can change the gauges and stuff. But yeah, this is pretty cool. It does only work for Speeduinos and Mega Squirts, but if you have those, I would highly suggest taking a tablet over the standard gauges, as buying many different gauges gets really expensive, and buying all the separate sensors gets even more expensive. This tablet here cost me like $100. I think it was actually less than 100. Might have been like $70. And yeah, it just connects via Bluetooth, and now I have access to everything I need, and I can even tune with it. And yeah, I just want to give you guys a quick look and show you how it works. Alright everybody, so I think I'm going to end the video off here. We got quite a bit done. We were able to get the first start successfully done, despite all the setbacks and having to drop the transmission out again and a bunch of small stuff. It's still not perfect. Like I was saying, there's still a coolant leak from the radiator. I'm going to go ahead and order all the parts that I need, despite saying that I wasn't going to, since I am a master of financial mistakes. But we'll get that done in the next video. I think I'm going to end it off here. We got quite a bit done, and this actually took me quite a bit of time to you know, get the video out to you guys. I think this was about close to a month of recording. Not all of that was just straight work on the car. Obviously I had other stuff going on, but I was really trying to get this done. But it's setback after setback. It just kind of makes things go by a little slower, and I didn't want to just drop a video where we didn't get the car started. But finally did it. We got the car started. Having to build the engine and rebuild it, put everything back together, take it apart, put it back together, all the small stuff. We finally got it started and running, and so far everything's going good, so I'm excited. But like I said, in the next video we'll tackle all the cooling stuff, which will be fun. We'll get all the radiator stuff in, new hoses, new thermostat, and we'll just make sure that the cooling system is good. That way we won't have any more issues with overheating, and then we'll look towards potentially either getting it dyno tuned or just going straight to the track and getting it tuned there. So I guess we'll see where life takes us, but I think that'll do it for me, unless I'm forgetting something, which I probably am. If you guys like the video, like, subscribe, you guys already know all that stuff, and yeah, I'll see you guys in the next video. Take care. Alright, so I got everything bolted up. Let's get it started up. Alright. Dude. Shut the